Welcome to the Central Pennsylvania Music Podcast. Tonight, Greg Platzer and John Smith's Voyages. This episode is sponsored by S. Jones Communications. And now your hosts, Daniel Kime and Alan McCutcheon.
Welcome to another episode of the Central Pennsylvania Music Podcast. Tonight, I'm your one and only host, Alan. On this night's episode, we have Greg Platzer of Greg Platzer Guitars. He's been in the industry longer than most people I know, and he's gained so much experience, and I can't wait to hear about it. Our second guest is also going to give us a musical performance, John Paul Smith of John Smith's Voyages. Can't wait to sit down with them both, but first, let's sit down with Greg. And we are sitting down with the legendary Greg Platzer.
Oh, stop.
I'm just saying how it is, man. I mean, your repertoire, it just like your resume is like I don't even know where to start. I'll let you start.
All right. I was born.
And that's it, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Yes.
But no, I mean, you have 40 plus years of vintage guitar restoration experience. You have over 40 years as well of performing. I mean, good Lord. I mean, you've been in bands such as Plain Jane, Citizen Kane, Grumpy. Grumpy is probably the longest, right? 27 years?
27 years.
That's like, just tell me your story. Let's start
All right.
a little after being born.
All right. A little after being born. Lived in Gettysburg as a kid. I don't know where to look. You know.
This one's your camera right there.
Okay.
And that one.
All right. Lived in Gettysburg as a kid. Can you hear me? And when I was a kid, everybody played guitar or sports or both. And so there were bands and stuff like that. And as time went by, I went to Penn State, but I was more interested in playing than studying. And I hooked up with some really good people and made some great connections, some lifelong friends, and then just started playing. And after 3 years of college, I realized that wasn't for me, so I became a barber. I was a barber stylist. And the cool thing about that was I could ride a motorcycle to work and didn't have to get a haircut. And I wore the same thing to work that I wore on stage. And my hair clients became band fans, and my band fans became hair clients.
That's crazy.
And it worked out really, really well. And I was very fortunate to play with some really excellent musicians because it's not really a band with one good player. Everybody has to be on the same page. And I just kind of made a lot of friends, and I've always been interested in taking things apart and putting them back together. So I like to work on motorcycles, and I like to work on guitars.
So you took apart your first guitar when you were like junior high school, right?
Oh, no, I was like 9.
9?
Yeah, 9 or 10.
Like,
yeah.
How's this work?
I took it apart. Well, my dad, when I was a kid, my dad was really handy, and he was an airline pilot. And he would go off on trips, and we would have stuff that would break, and we'd wait till Dad came home to fix it. Mm-hmm. And then I remember on one, I guess I was, bless you, 9 or 10, and my dad went on a trip, and he left something, and he said, I want you to fix this so that it works when I get home. And all of a sudden, I was fixing stuff. And it worked out really well. And I'm fascinated by how things work. And so between that and being a musician, it only made sense that I would start working on guitars. And I broke enough of them, and I had to figure out how to fix them. And in the 70s, you didn't have the internet. You didn't have all the opportunities that we have now. And so as a result, you had to kind of come up with your own way of doing stuff.
Yeah, you don't have a supercomputer in your pocket.
Not at all. And so I just figured out how to fix stuff, and it just went from there. And so I was always doing that as a side business while I was playing. Mm-hmm. And then in 94, I was tired of the place. I was a hairstylist, and I was tired of the boss I had and the place I was working. And I got it all set up that I was going to get my own hair salon. I had staff that was going to go with me, product lines that were going to go with me, and I had a location. I had everything. And I came up here to buy guitar strings from the the fellow that owned BCR Music. His name was Brian. And he said, I'm going to sell the store. And I went, there it is. And so I got out of here and I bought BCR Music, and I had BCR Music for 27 years. Yeah, I had Grumpy for 25. We said 27 earlier. 27. It was 25. And through that, I made all kinds of connections. And it was a tour stop because Hershey's such a big tour stop. So a lot of bands on tour would stop by my store.
Absolutely.
And you never knew who was going to be hanging out at the repair bench at BCR. And
I mean, then you had the Champ right around the corner then too.
Yeah, I mean,
this
late
area, 2000s, that thing was popping. So I mean, I know you already had a name for yourself, but your name really started to spread because one of the things we talked about before we came on camera here was, I think it's crazy. Like, one of your customers was Sky Eats Airplane, and that happened simply because they happened to be playing at the Champ. Guy's guitar broke, and they're like, "Oh, we got to call Uncle Greg." Yeah. And it's like, so you literally had that reputation within the community. It's like, oh, we know exactly who to call right away.
Yeah.
That doesn't come from someone that doesn't know what they're doing.
Well, I'll tell you what. One of the things that I hold dear is the only reason you will stop being able to do business is if you give people a reason to not do business with you. So if you don't give anybody a reason to avoid you, they will eventually do business with you. And there's not a lot of people working on guitars, so sooner or later, there's some great people in this area. I have to say, and this is prudent to this whole podcast idea, there's always been a really good music scene in Central PA. When I was a kid, you could go out any night of the week and see live music. And on the weekends, it was really kind of like, well, which band do we want to go see? Mm-hmm. We'd hop on motorcycles and go see the first set of this band, the second set of that band, the third set of that band, then go to the after-hour party and then try not to get arrested on the way home. And nowadays, it's still a better music scene than, say, L.A., which is all pay-to-play. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can still make money. Nobody can make a living as a musician in Central PA anymore, but you can still at least pay for your gear, which a lot of the bigger communities, it just isn't there anymore. So, to get back, I made friends with people. They went national. I didn't. And I had a life, and a lot of my friends that didn't have lives became, big time roadies and tour managers and sound men and what have you. And then through them, and then just me being in the right place at the right time, I've built a bit of a clientele.
Bit of a clientele is kind of an understatement there, Greg. I mean, your customers include Aerosmith, Sheryl Crow, Kiss, Skillet, Cheap Trick. I mean, John Bon Jovi, Lita Ford. I mean, yeah, just a small clientele is nothing to be impressed with, right?
A couple of amateurs here and there.
just a few. Might have played a gig or two.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. How did that even come about? How did you get these connections, like, with these big time artists? Like, how did that first connection happen?
Well, I'll tell you a weird thing. I realized one day not too long ago, as a kid in Gettysburg, on my wall I had posters of the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Kiss, Aerosmith, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Cheap Trick, and Steely Dan. And with the exception of Hendrix, I've worked with everybody, and
that's insane, man.
And it blows my mind.
It blows my mind.
Well, like I said, some of the people that went off, like there was a guy, and his name's Wayne. I don't know what his last name is, but we went to college together. Mm-hmm. And Wayne, I'm sorry, dude. When you see this, I don't know your last name, but he has a nickname which I really shouldn't say. All right, that's how everybody knows him, because who wants to be called Wayne? But Wayne ended up. Wayne was an okay drummer, but he was a hard worker, and so Wayne ended up being a roadie, setting up and tearing down, and then he became a carpenter, setting up and tearing down stages.
Okay, and
he started working with everybody, and because he's a hard worker and he shuts his mouth, he gets rehired. And Wayne would come through, and he'd be at Hershey with, one time he was with Nugent. One time he was there with Earth, Wind, and Fire. It was like all these big name bands, and they were trusting him to set up and tear down the stuff. And between him and then some of the guitar techs, a lot of guitar techs, and I've worked as a guitar tech. A lot of us are players that didn't make it, and I worked with a guy that was playing with a band that was out on tour with, again, Ted Nugent. And I went over and fixed some stuff at Hershey for him. And then 2 weeks later, he comes walking in my shop, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? He goes, oh, I'm out with Whitney Houston now. And he was taking care of Whitney Houston's guitar player.
No big deal.
Yeah, well, these guys are gypsies, and they get hired and they get hired. And if you're good, if you're A-level, then you don't ever have to worry about getting rehired. You have people competing for you.
You have people with a very big reputation vouching for you.
And so these people gain trust. And so when something breaks down, they say, oh, I got a guy. I got Uncle Greg. Here's his phone number. Call him. And the other thing I've always done, I worked with so many different bands that I got to know the guitar techs. And what I would do is tell them that they had free use of my bench with, I had all the machines and everything you needed. So no matter how badly broken something was, you could fix it in my shop. And so guys would be in Missouri and something would break and they'd call me up. Hey, this is broken. And their itinerary would have them in Hershey in 3 weeks. They'd ship the guitar up, I'd fix it, and then I'd go over and hand it to them, So, and, people talk. And if you do a good enough job, people that don't even know you will trust you.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't think of a better backstage pass than like, hey, man, what are you doing here? And you're like, oh, I have his guitar.
Yeah, you see this?
You see this right here? They're like, oh, okay. And then they have to let you. You're like, yeah, move aside.
Well, again, it's people think that it's like this weird mystery world and stuff. And I'll be honest with you, 30 years ago, backstage was wild. Nowadays, backstage is a bunch of old men looking at their phones. All right, there's no romance about being backstage. It's just a bunch of people doing their job. In fact, nowadays, because everybody has in-ears, there's most bands don't even have monitors on stage anymore, and most people are running direct, so it doesn't even sound good being backstage.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, I can think of a few situations where it was like that. Like that makes sense.
Yeah,
but I mean, so we've gone through the whole buildup of how you've acquired BCR, how you built these connections, but you still are currently playing, correct?
Yeah.
With a band called Groove Rebels.
Groove Rebels.
And you actually have a song in a movie, a major motion picture, right?
All right. Here's what happened. I work with a charity called Joy to the Berg. Remember this, Joy to the Berg. And it was started by a friend of mine, Sheldon. He was a guitar student at my shop. And he had this idea, and we talked about it, and he started it several years ago. And the idea is you get local musicians to do Christmas songs, either traditional songs or originals, record them, and then sell the CDs and downloads. And all of the proceeds go to help a women's shelter in Harrisburg. And
which is awesome.
It's a fantastic thing. It's to entertain people and help people at the same time. It's amazing. It's called Joy to the Berg. And so I always did songs with my band Grumpy. Well, Grumpy ended a couple years ago. So last year I did the song myself. Well, the night before the session, I was recording it with Michael Giblin down at Red Chuck Studios. And the night before I thought, well, I better write a song. So I just threw something together.
In one night.
Yeah. I just sat down with a legal pad and I wrote a verse and I threw some chords together that seemed to work well and figured, well, we'll just build it up in the studio. So I went down and Giblin is a genius. And I played what I had and he said, all right, play it again. And I played it and he goes, well, we don't really need to do much to that. So I just wrote another verse and we just recorded it, and then we listened to it, and we changed a couple things, and then pretty soon the song was done.
Okay.
And I had him play bass on it, and Logan Bedard played drums on it.
Okay.
And Michael Stipe from Versus Machine is an amazing cinematographer, so he shot the whole thing. So there would be 6 versions of the first verse and 4 versions of the second verse and 5 takes of the guitar solo and whatever, and he filmed all of that, and Michael put a video together.
Okay.
And the song made the cut, and then the video got released. And I got a phone call from a guy in Texas, and he said, I'm making a movie called It's a Gettysburg Christmas, and I've been looking for just the right song to be the pivot where everything changes in the movie. And I saw the video of your song, and I want to put your song in my movie. So the premiere is in November in Gettysburg. I'm taking my mom, and so the song's called "It's Christmas." If anybody cares, it's on YouTube. And
Definitely gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, I had to check this out. I started a publishing company. I've been writing songs for years, but haven't done anything with them. And I had to start a publishing company so that I could have the song published, and then I'm with BMG and everything like that. So, in true American fashion, paying the musicians, and what little money is left over, it cost me more than that to start my publishing company. So the song is now, it has already cost me $637.
Okay.
So I'm in the red, $637 with this song. So
okay.
I'm going to put it on Spotify, and hopefully people will download it or whatever, and 0.0032 cents per download. Eventually, I might actually get out of the red.
Get out of that 600 incrementally at a time, every play at a time.
Start a business to lose money.
That's okay. We'll set up a Raspberry Pi, and its whole job will just be play the song over and over again.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Yeah.
We got you.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's out there, everybody
we'll get
just
you out of the red, man.
Put it on repeat and walk away.
Just let it play.
Yeah. But no, I've been very, very lucky. I got to say, this has been a fantastic music community. I grew up surrounded by excellent people. Between the musicians, there have been some amazing clubs, some amazing club owners. There's all kinds of great stuff. In fact, I'm also in another band called Electric Land. We're a Bad Company tribute act.
Quick question. How many hours are in your day?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And Jim DeLizio from the Racehorse Tavern found out about us, and he calls up. He says, "I want you to play here." And we needed to shoot some live video. It's in Thomasville.
Okay.
And we need to shoot some live video, so we're going to play this club and shoot it so that we have some live video for promotional stuff and everything. And it's just kind of cool that a club owner is like, "Well, why don't you come down here and do it here in my club?" So we are blessed with an excellent community. It's not what it was, but it's a lot better than what a whole lot of people have. And you have to support live music, people. Support live music.
Love it.
Don't stay home and binge watch, stupid TVs. Go out and support music, because when it's gone, it's not coming back. It's too hard to become a good musician. It requires way too long to get to the point where you can entertain people. Nobody can pick up a guitar and write a song and play it for you in 2 days like you can with a video game. And so as a result, there are fewer and fewer outlets for live music, and people are not picking up guitars. I sold BCR 2 years ago, and when I bought BCR in 1994, I was selling guitars to kids all the time. When I left BCR, when I sold it, the average customer age was 35. So we are not creating a future if we're not supporting live music and not making the act of playing music something that people want to do. When I was a kid, it was the Beatles. I mean, it was like, wow, everybody wanted to be George, or John. And so support live music, support live music, support live music.
I'll be honest, that's a statistic that I was not aware of, but I mean, who else to know the best than someone that owned a guitar shop for 20 plus years and saw the demographics change and like how many you sold per demographic. Like, I didn't know that. But when you put it like that, you're right. You can get that instant dopamine release picking up a video game. You're like, cool. Whereas guitar, to get that dopamine release of, I just played my first show, dude, you're like, you just picked it up. You've got at minimum a couple years.
There are no cheats. There are no cheats for playing a musical instrument.
There's not.
You have to put the effort in, and then you have to be willing to get together with other people. And the thing is, when you're in a band, it's like being married to 3 or 4 other people. There's
not
so
wrong.
much give or take.
There is.
And I've seen some amazing bands that didn't last because the personalities didn't work. And there's some bands out there where the personalities are so great, the music's not that good, but you still go see them because the people are great.
That's true.
It's a different kind of experience.
It's a wombo combo right there.
Yeah.
But so we've talked about how the demographic changed, and we do need to support live music because we are
Absolutely.
getting less and less musicians. But for some of the dedicated musicians that we have, people that are dedicated to their craft, and they want that unique thing that no one else has, they can come to you, correct? For that unique,
Yeah, I'll build you
one
a
of a
guitar.
kind.
Yeah.
They
I'll
come
build
with a
you guitar.
lifetime warranty, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, of course. As long as I'm alive, I'll fix it. When I'm dead, leave me alone. But building guitars, nowadays you can buy all these kits, and you spray paint the parts and stick them together and stuff like that. But a luthier is somebody who's committed to the craft of actually building musical instruments. And I've been doing it for a very long time, and I'm very fortunate that there are some sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
My guitars are in the hands of some pretty cool people. And I'm actually compiling an endorser list, so I don't want to dirty that by saying anything right now.
Okay,
But,
understood. Hey, I don't want to screw anything up.
I
for
will
you.
say, if you go see ZZ Top, you'll see some of my stuff. And I've been very, very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. The bass player in ZZ Top, Elwood, was their guitar tech. And Elwood has been in the industry as long as me. In fact, he's the guy that introduced Steve Vai to David Lee Roth when David Lee Roth left Van Halen. I met him when he worked for Aerosmith in the 90s, and then he ended up spending 30 years working with ZZ Top. And then when Dusty Hill unfortunately passed away, they just brought him right up on stage. So this old guitar roadie is now a bass player. So
Member of ZZ Top.
yeah, so
The ultimate dream of a guitar tech or a roadie, I would think. Like, it's like,
Yeah, you make
especially
it
when
on
you're doing it that
stage.
long, you're like, I am in the band now. Like,
yeah.
that.
They make movies like that,
There is movies like
yeah,
that.
Rockstar.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you guys know this is my time signing off. Greg is now going to be the host of the podcast moving forward, because this guy has just. You've got a story for everything. I mean,
do.
and you've been
I've
through
been
the
lucky.
ringer.
I've been lucky.
And it's honestly, it's really awesome to hear you.
Blessed by the Lord.
It's awesome to hear the humbleness in that. So with that, what advice can you give to these upcoming bands that are trying to break through the market right now compared to the experience that you have? What little tidbits of just wisdom could you bestow on them?
Honestly, believe in yourself. Every time you get turned down, every time somebody closes a door on you, turn that into fuel. If you let negativity build up, it'll crush you. So what you do is every time somebody's negative towards you, you turn it around. Because eventually, if you can stick it out, then you can show them. You can become successful. And then you just go, hey, you were wrong. And saying that to people, you don't have to be a jackass about it, but when you tell somebody that was wrong and they tell you, you know what, I was wrong, it feels real good. I've had that happen to me. Surround yourself with people that believe in you. Surround yourself with people that are going to keep you straight and normal, and don't indulge in things you shouldn't indulge in, and just believe. Just believe, because music it heals things. It makes us all better. A good song will unite everybody. You could be a football player, a fireman, a ditch digger, a jet pilot, and you can all like the same song. Music it pulls us all together. So be part of that and pull people together. That's what I got.
Greg, I don't. That was like literally perfect. I mean, I don't know a better way to sign you off, but Greg, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your
thank you.
schedule, coming on here. It was truly a pleasure being able to sit down and talk with you. So thank you so much, and we look forward to maybe having you on a different podcast here in the future.
I would love to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you.
So I've got to say, out of all the guests we've had on this podcast so far, I think Greg's closing statement was probably one of the most genuine and most heartfelt we've had to date. It's one of the reasons why I love hosting the show, is being able to sit down with artists just like this and getting to talk one-on-one and having that connection. And speaking of that heart-to-heart and having that connection, let's introduce our second guest, John Paul Smith. John, it is a pleasure to have you. You look fabulous this evening. And I just gotta say, I love the
you.
pose that you had. You are the first person on the podcast to strike the pose.
Well, right. I mean, you have this lovely long couch. I feel like it'd be a shame if you didn't use the whole thing.
Can't let it go to waste, right?
Right. You know.
So speaking of not letting things go to waste, let's talk about your talent. You can play a
That's
plethora. From what I understand, you can play a plethora of instruments. I mean, we got your new album coming out. We're going to let you talk about that. But you, if I am correct, you played, recorded, and mixed all of it yourself.
Yeah, that's all correct. That all just kind of started when I was younger. I played trumpet back in grade school and middle school, and then around high school is when I started getting more into other types of music. Piano in particular was very interesting to me, so I started playing around on this like old toy organ, grabbed some junky guitar that my cousin didn't play anymore, and just started collecting instruments. And I was like, this is really cool, and really wanted to form a band and just couldn't find the right people to do it with. But I had all these ideas as I was starting to write songs about different instrumentation that I wanted to hear, and I couldn't get a band together. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll just learn these instruments myself. And it started out of necessity, just, to get my songs across the way I heard them in my head. But then it just became really fun to learn more about these instruments and how they work and how they fit in an arrangement. So that's the path I went down. And this will be my second album. The first one, I did all the instruments and production myself as well. And this one, I think, is a huge step up from all that. I think I'm a much better lyricist, arranger, producer. So I'm quite chuffed with everything that came together with it, and excited to put it out there. Yeah,
absolutely. What is the album called?
It is called Unattended Symphony, which is taken from a line in one of the songs on the album.
Okay.
So and that was a fun title, I thought, for taking on a number of different meanings. One in the sense that I did it all myself, so it's
absolutely. It's almost like an untitled EP,
right? Yeah,
but you're like, I'm not going EP. Your music is very creative, and I mean that.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely, every compliment. I mean, look, can we just comment on this man's outfit and style? I mean, I'm just gonna say it, like, dude, you look like you stepped right out of an Austin Powers movie, and I'm 100% here for it.
I get
love
that a lot, yeah, and the 60s and 70s, huge influence on my music as well as the fashion, and really that just came about because.
I was gonna ask, like, how did this all start?
Yeah, as I started getting into the music, I'm one of those people that gets hardcore invested in things. So it as I started getting into bands like the Kinks and the Who and Supertramp and ELO and the Beatles and all that stuff, I needed to research it. And luckily I grew up in an age where I had that all at my disposal with the internet, and being able to hear these songs on YouTube and all sorts of other things. So that was like really, really nice to grow up in the age that I did to discover these bands a lot more than I might have if I grew up with them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, so I researched these bands, and every picture you see of them, they look rad as heck, and they have such a presence. They had like, such, creative and wacky outfits, and I just thought that was so cool. And, You don't see as much experimentation with fashion in the realm of rock and roll, or at least like male rock and roll. Let's put it that way, because I guess like in recent memory you have Lady Gaga just like taking the world by storm with her music as well as her fashion, right?
Absolutely,
but like when's the last male artist you can think of to have like crazy fashion, and it's but it was everywhere in the 60s and 70s. You had all that androgynous culture going on, and it was great. And so like I'm like, wow, like as I'm getting into music and wanting to perform, I'm like, I really dig what these guys look like. Like I want to look like that too. So it's just like, started going to thrift stores and picking up things, and started carving out my wardrobe a bit at a time. And at this point, that's really all I own. Like, I mean, this is
Stage wear.
my stage gear, but like, I'd wear these pants on any given night, really. I'd wear a button-up shirt, most times, that I go out. So it's just like that's like all I have in my wardrobe anymore. So.
Dude, I love the dedication. I mean, there's one thing about being like passionate, and then there's another step called living it.
Yes.
Like, and I feel like, I mean, this is the style that you like. I mean, what better way to better hone your craft than to truly live in the way of the era that inspires you.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, and especially like, I mean, as far as like the music goes, like I've always strived to be inspired by it but not imitate it. You
want to be inspired but be authentic.
Inspiration over imitation. Yeah, because there's a lot of easy ways where you could just like be like, oh, I'm gonna rewrite this song, and I frankly started out that way when I was like writing my first songs.
Sure.
Just kind of like almost like ripping off other songs, and at some point I realized like I need to find a voice of my own. The something about this feels inauthentic. And when I started writing from my heart and, using all these acts as inspiration rather than like trying to be them, is when things started clicking, and I was like doing things and trying things that like were just me and felt natural. And that came with the fashion then too. Like, it's just like, this isn't like me feeling like, oh, I need to look this way and dress this way on stage. I do, but like I said, this is just like my wardrobe.
This is
daily.
Who you are.
Yeah, this is who I am.
That's awesome.
This is what I like to wear. So
Dude, that's amazing. So I mean, not only are you living it, but I mean, you're obviously very dedicated to your craft. And going back to your EP or your album coming up, Unattended Symphony. I mean, you got all the funds to do that yourself. I mean, you didn't use GoFundMe. There was no like Venmo. There was no nothing. You received donations through your website, correct?
Yes, yeah. So I was the main goal was to try to raise funds. So I'd recorded it all myself and all of that. So there wasn't any sort of like production costs. But I was thinking this would be cool to put on vinyl. This would be, it'd be great to like get some funds for press and promotion for the album. And so that was the main thinking behind that. But I didn't want to just dive in and print out a bunch of vinyl and not have anybody want them,
Yeah, of course.
And it is a costly thing. So I was like, well, maybe I'll try GoFundMe, maybe I'll try Kickstarter. I asked like a couple of friends about that had done it successfully, and just kind of getting ideas and going back and forth. And eventually I decided, I was like, well, why don't I just like do it like grassroots? Why don't I just try that on I have a website, I can set it up like you would any other like merchandise like page.
Yep.
And so that's what I did, and yeah, it was successful, and the main reason for that was because GoFundMe and Kickstarter, they will take a chunk of the money that you raise,
Sure.
Taxes and all that jazz, and so it does like take a percentage out, so you have to actually raise more than what you actually need because of that.
To get the actual amount that you initially wanted.
Right. So it was like, well, again, like I said, why don't I just try this? Like, so I set up a website page. I did let people donate like Venmo or PayPal and things like that if they didn't want to like buy something directly from the website and just wanted to like give me some money, like,
oh sure, yeah.
So like I set that up as well. And yeah, it was really cool to see how many people cared and supported it.
Absolutely.
It is certainly one of those things that like was stressful, because I did think how many people actually care about what I'm doing, how many people actually want to like put money toward this album.
It's scary.
It's scary. It can feel egotistical a lot of times. Like, it's like, with all the terrible things that are going on all the time, it can feel weird to be like, hey, instead of donating your money to some other cause, how about my album? And
yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it does feel selfish at times, but at the end of the day, like, there's people that know you, that love you, and want to support you, and that kind of opened my eyes to that like, not only that, but like, music is a very healing thing. It's a very community driven thing, and at the end of the day, like, yeah, maybe it can feel weird to say, hey, look at me, like, I'm making music, don't pay attention to anything else, but like, it's important, again, like, it's a community thing, and going back to community, that's how I raise the funds for this. So it was cool to like have that, like, it's all one big organism at the end of the day. Like,
absolutely.
And was really heartwarming to see all the
it's like
people.
Our first guest, Greg, said music heals.
Yes.
It can bring people together. So I get the point that you're making, where it's like, being in that position, you're like, it can feel like kind of weird because there is things going on in the world and everything, and you're like, please pay attention to me. No, but I think I don't think it should feel egotistical in a way. I feel like, if anything, it's almost like a sense of like normalcy. It's
For
like,
sure.
because it's like, there is all these things going on, but it's like, what's always going to be happening is musicians are trying to make it, and musicians are trying to make it doing what they love. So I think it's almost like it brings you back down to earth. It's normalcy, and it almost feels like comforting. It's like, yeah, dude,
definitely.
let's help the musicians, man.
Definitely, right? Because like it's like, all going on around us. Like there's horrible stuff, but there's really great stuff too. So
Absolutely.
it's important to not get bogged down and think that everything is awful all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, and with that, I mean, I'm assuming, I don't want to say I assume, would you say that some of the stuff that's, all this negative stuff, like, is that inspiration some of your music sometimes? Or where do you pull your inspiration from to write these musics?
Yeah.
These musics, these songs.
Music's plural.
These music's plural.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's, I do find myself writing more about life, I don't write, many love songs or anything like that, which
I gotta say, I'm kind of surprised about that, because like, I feel like someone, I would expect it, honestly, man. I feel like I would expect like a classic 60s love song.
Very, very, very hippy dippy. No, it's never like, I don't like have anything against love songs. I think it's like a very universal topic, obviously, and I think it's one of the most like written about subjects because it is like so universal,
sure.
Right? But it was never something that really like caught me, and that's not to say that I don't dig like any good love songs or anything like that, but it was never like anytime that I again, like going back to where I started, was like trying to write love songs, like it just felt forced. It felt like I was like, well, this is what people write about, so I have to as well. But yeah, I most of what I find inspiring me as far as subjects, just like, what's going on in life, what struggles, strife, things like that. And not to say that I'm just like writing a bunch of depressing stuff, but just kind of maybe reflective stuff is a good way to put it, where sometimes things that are deeply connected to me from a personal point, but a lot of times just like the bigger picture, and as far as like planning that goes, writing a song, you don't really. Sometimes you're just like at the piano or whatever, and it something, a line or two clicks, and it's like, oh, that's what this song's about.
And then it starts flowing out, the creative process. I mean, I get that. I mean, like, sit there and be like, oh, I'm specifically going to write about this. I mean, you can have that idea all day long.
Right.
But then once you start writing, it's almost funny because, I mean, we've said this before, music can be therapeutic, not only for the listeners, but for the artist. I mean, you can think you know what you want to write about and you have this topic, but then the song, once it's done, it came out completely different.
Yeah.
And it might have also helped you kind of heal through something.
100%. Yeah. And that's the fun thing about it is like, sometimes you just gotta like let it flow, let things come naturally, and before you actually figure out what the song's about, maybe, and I think, like you said, that is therapy in itself, as you're working through what's on your mind, or maybe even your subconscious at the time.
Sure.
So
between the music that we have nowadays and the music style and genre that you like to write, what would you say is what really grabbed you out of the genre, like the era that you chose compared to like today's music? How would you say that got you?
I think it was just the experimentation of everything going on at the time, and it was inventive, it was creative, it was unashamedly weird, and I'd say probably that last one most of all. I think there's there's so much in the age of social media, so much thought goes into how you're being perceived and whatnot, and a lot of it does end up becoming a fake image or persona because having to impress people all the time and whatever, it was just such a creative time for music. I think apart from just being weird, people were trying different things from a writing standpoint, but also from a production standpoint. I think in this day and age we live in a world of here's how you record drums, here's how you record this instrument, and it's very cookie cutter and it's very cut and clean. But what they don't tell you is it's not the only way to do it. And I think what was really cool about that era, 60s and 70s, is they were figuring this stuff out, and once they figured it out, they were like, well, what if we try it this way, And it was just going against the grain all the time. And yes, something about that just no pun intended, struck a chord with me, because it was just the creativity and the coloring outside the lines,
Yeah.
And there's tons of artists that do that nowadays as well. But I think you kind of have to dig for that a bit harder, a bit further below the surface to find artists that are being a bit more experimental and going against the grain, like I said. So yeah,
that's a really good way to put it. I mean, you're right. They were always experimenting. It was almost it was never complete. It was always constantly unrefined. It was oh, we got here, but now let's take it here, and now let's take it here.
Right.
It was never the finished product. It was just always a continuous work in progress.
Yep. Yeah.
That's a really good point, man. So I gotta say, I mean, I've looked up some of your stuff, and I've done some research, and the one comment that I keep seeing a lot, and I think you kind of know where I'm going to go with this, but I've heard a lot of people say that you're kind of if David Bowie and Freddie Mercury kind of had a love child, as far as vocally, and I gotta say, I've listened to some of your stuff, and I don't think they're incorrect. So dude, good
cool.
for you, man. That's impressive, man.
Yeah, and both those artists are inspirations to me. But I started getting those comparisons before I really got into those artists, which was interesting. People kept saying David Bowie, Freddie Mercury, stuff like that, and I was like, wow, thank you. I know a handful of their songs and think they're cool, but apart from that, didn't know too much about them. It was one show where someone saw me for the first time, and he was like, you're if David Bowie and Freddie Mercury had a love child. I was like, that's cool. I'm going to use that, so I have that as a general tagline for John Smith's Voyages. But only because I thought that was cool, but also because a lot of people say that, and that was crazy to me. Once I started digging more into these artists, I was like, holy crap, these guys are really good. Again, like I said, I enjoyed them at a base level, but once people kept saying that, I checked them out, and I was like, wow, this is the highest compliment ever. What the heck, So,
dude, it's well deserved.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's it was surprising to me. Like I said, once I dug further into these artists, I was like, this is what people hear? This is crazy.
You're thank you so much.
Yeah, right. So, that was, but I'm glad it's held up, I guess.
Absolutely. So with this Untitled Symphony.
Unattended Symphony, yeah.
Or Unattended?
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Unattended Symphony. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. So you do have a release show coming up in December, correct?
Yes. So, release show, I want December 8th. At Lit Shirt Factory. I'm gonna be that guy and check my cellular telephone on that. But I believe.
And you have a couple other shows coming up leading up to that as well, correct?
Yes. So the next one coming up, we're playing Thanksgiving Eve, and this is a full band. playing Thanksgiving Eve at 3rd and Spruce. That's in West Reading. We have the album release show is December 9th at Lit Shirt Factory.
Okay.
And then we have a couple other dates after that. We're at 3rd and Spruce again, and then at Tellus 360 later in December as well. But yes, the release show will be at Lit Shirt Factory. We'll have all the merchandise available, the vinyls, the t-shirts, everything. And that'll be cool because that will be released to anyone that's there at the time, but the album won't officially release until January. So if anyone wants like that sneak peek and wants that little, feel.
I got to see it first.
Yeah, right. that sort of gloating. You can come to the release show, and then,
That's
like
awesome.
I said, officially release in January. Then, so yeah,
And where will it release in January?
January 4th. So yeah.
And then where?
Just Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all the places
major
that the
players
kids are at these days. Yeah,
Where all the kids are at these days.
those
I love
youngsters,
it.
I'll tell you.
Those rascals.
Snappers.
That's awesome. So, I mean, also, before we have you step off stage, we are actually going to have a live performance from you, correct?
Yes. So I'll be performing the first track on the album, which is called Reptile. And that's a fun one that, on the album has cellos and clarinets and trumpets and all sorts of things going on that I put on there. But I think sounds, really cool stripped down as well. So I'll be performing that. And that's a really fun number.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for coming
thanks
on.
for having me. Thanks, Central PA Music Hall of Fame. This is great.
Absolutely, man. I mean, and with that, without further ado, take it away, John.
This is John Paul Smith of John Smith's Voyages with my song Reptile from my upcoming album Unattended Symphony for a CPMP exclusive. Did you hear the so-called prophet mention? All our kids are fenced in, ridden with infection. Saw it coming, speaking of a certain vaccination, was drowned by conversations. Tourists on vacation, always running. Oh well, I'll just keep on gardening, removing all the horrid things that make my eyes so sore. Seems that all the ground is hardening. Don't even bother trying to find something that is pure. Oh, reptile, how's your new skin? Is your blood still cold from when they told you love was wearing thin? Cracked smile and a flick of the tongue might keep them at bay, but you'll be prey when all is said and done. End up in a cage for restless eyes to grow bored as you age. Did you hear the latest proposition? Funds for ammunitions to spread our conditions like a plague. Suddenly the tourists drop their visors, paint up all their flyers to convince deniers they know the way. But I've got dishes in the sink, wishes fill the wine I drink, keeping me obscured. And I'm sure there's poison on the kisses that I think were given to me just to see how long I'd be deterred. Reptile, how's your new skin? Is your blood still cold from when they told you love was wearing thin? Cracked smile and a flick of the tongue might keep them at bay, but you'll be prey when all is said and done. Or perhaps end up in a cage for restless eyes to grow bored as you age. Did you see it coming? Wish you had in light. And oh, dear, too late to start running.
lock me up inside. Reptile, how's your new skin? Is your blood still cold from when they told you love was wearing thin? Crack smile and a flick of the tongue might keep them at bay, but you'll be prey when all is said and done. Or perhaps end up in a cage for restless eyes to grow bored as you age.
And what a wonderful performance by John Paul Smith of John Smith's Voyages. Thanks again for tuning in this evening. We'll see you next time.